Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to pick up where we left off, and we're going to look at a couple different navigation systems on board the F-16. So right now I've got myself at a real comfortable cruise, doing a Mach 0.8, which is more than fast enough, especially because we're only at 15,000 feet here. We're not terribly high. So what I'm going to do is we're going to take a look at some of the other modes you have as far as navigation goes. The F-16 itself is equipped with a Tack as well as its fancy pants little system down here, which allows us to actually use GPS and INS to identify where we are. We also have the ability to follow a specific heading. So let's go ahead and take a look at the basics ones first. And that's going to be following a heading. Let's say we've been given some instructions. Let's go zoom out a little tiny bit here. And let's see, it's an emergency. We've bbeen asked to go to Napa Vitidevzevo. I totally butchered that, sorry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select my heading here. We're going to say this is going to be our diversion point here. Hold my map right here. And it looks like it's a 2901. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here. I'm going to crank this to 2901. It's going to be 2901. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and right-click twice to set this to heading select mode. So what's going to happen now is the F-16 is going to go ahead and roll itself over, and it's going to start bringing us towards that new heading that we've selected. Keep in mind, when we do this, we are now off course from our original selected point, which is the one that's located right here. That's perfectly fine. It's not anything I'm going to stress too much about. So we're cruising a little bit, and now we're going to notice an interesting problem that you probably have seen before, but you're not quite sure what causes it. So let's go ahead and click on ourselves here. We're at 270, 281, coming around pretty nicely here. All right, that looks pretty good. Okay, you can see the aircraft is currently rolling out on its desired heading. And like I said, right about 290 is going to be where it's going to pop us, which is about right there. Now, if I click on my aircraft, you'll notice that it's pointing at 297 degrees, not 290 degrees. You're probably sitting here going, oh, I know what the problem is. Yeah, you're right. It's called magnetic variation. So one of the problems you're going to have is when you do pick a heading, remember you're going to be dealing with the constant battle between what the true heading is and what the actual heading is. So make sure you do your subtraction depending on what particular map that you're in. In this case, you can see, even though I've selected 292, my actual magnetic variation is going to be, let's see, 2 and 7. It's about 7 degrees difference. It's something you're going to have to watch out for. Let's go ahead and bring ourselves over to our next waypoint. To do that, I can just press this little arrow here to select my next one. Then, of course, you can come down here and bop it down to steering select. And the whole aircraft will kind of turn itself right away. Now, one of the cool things with the F-16 is the way the automatic pilot is set up is I can actually come in here and shut off altitude hold. What I can actually do is I can lift the nose up like this, smack it to attitude hold, and now what the aircraft will actually do is it'll hold that attitude as it turns. Again, this is a wonderful trick if you need to hold in place, for example. Now, you can do that in reverse as well. Let's say I want to turn altitude hold back on, but I want to shut heading select off. If I do that, now the aircraft is going to hold a constant altitude. It will get it in a second. And it will actually hold me orbiting in place like this. And it's, like I said, an absolutely great trick. If you're sitting here and, you're trying to do some target spotting, you're looking out the window and zooming way the heck in here going, I think I see a target right there. This is the one we want to hit kind of a thing. And it works really, really well for that particular purpose. So I'm going to go ahead and now go back here, flip back to steering select. Again, you can fly it yourself. All you have to do is get the tadpole to agree with your flight path vector, and it'll take you right down to where you need to do. So what we're going to do now is we're going to skip time a little bit as we try to track ourselves on a Tack. All right. So now the problem we have here with using Tack, which is basically almost like a fancy VOR, is the nearest Tack that we have at our disposal is all the way down here in Georgia, which is a bit of a ride for us. But don't worry, you won't have to sit through it. So I'm going to come down here, find myself an interesting Tack beacon. Now we have TISC, which is on channel 31. If it doesn't give you any more details, it simply means 31 X-ray. So we're going to pop over here. I'm going to go up to the top and press tills. And I'm simply going to pop over to the mode that we need. So come down to channel. And we said 31 enter, which is going to be 31 X-ray. And you can see it immediately identifies it as TISC, which is exactly what we want. Now to make this work properly, we can either set it to record mode, which is only going to give us bearing. Or if we want, we can come up and press the sequence button and switch it to T/R, which is now going to also give us the ability to actually detect a different, actually get distance as well. Now that we've set all that up, I can pop my head down here and press the M key until it says TCN, which simply means Tack. Now we can go ahead and give this thing a quick little wheel. Let's see if we can determine the bearing. Looks like the bearing is going to be 120. Yikes, that's not going to be a bit of a ride for us. Looks like 228 nautical miles. Good thing we're in an F-16, right? Wait this one a little bit here. I'll use my heading select mode to kind of hold us. Your navigation, your steering select will not automatically hold that. This is something you're actually going to have to fly by hand. But this also gives us a good time to go ahead and get ourselves a little bit of altitude. All right, We're going to come swinging this way. Pretty good so far. You can see we have plenty of airspeed out behind us. We've got our altitudes looking good. And now we are beginning to track that TACAN beacon directly to the destination. Now, this is a great technique, assuming you have the ability to even have this. Remember, you can track this in both directions, and if you treat it like a VOR, you're probably going to be in pretty good shape. What we're going to do now is we're going to skip the trip, and we'll take a look at the ILS side of things. Whew, we missed a pretty long flight there. Oh my. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some of our ILS capability in this aircraft. One thing that you're probably wondering too, is it possible to program your own waypoints into this? Believe it or not, you can, which is what I ended up having to do here, although I cheated a little bit. And if you actually come to the steer point page, you can actually change which steer point you're currently selected. You can actually use these arrows to select a particular latitude and longitude and manually enter it. Now, the neat thing here is if I wanted to know what it is, for example, if I clicked on Sanaki Kolki, you can actually read off these particular digits and then dial them into it, just like you saw a moment ago. Something you want to watch out for, though, is the format of the coordinate. You have to make sure that it matches the one that you see in the F-16. Otherwise, you're going to get yourself in a bit of a bad spot. So anyway, let's do some landing on this sucker, shall we? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Sanaki here, and we're going to go ahead and take advantage of the 31 X-ray, which is its handy-dandy little backhand there. We're going to do 31 and enter. Disk, and we're going to go ahead and make sure we select. Notice our ILS is already turned on. We're going to sequence, transmit, and remove. Remember, we're going to go ahead and get the ILS frequency. I'm going to left click on it. The ILS goes this way, by the way. And we're simply going to select 10890. Over here. I love how you can just dial it in. This is so nice. Make sure you select your appropriate course. Otherwise, you're going to get yourself in a really bad spot. So the course for this particular one, if you take it, is a runway 9er, which simply means that it's going to be around 9 or 0 degrees. Obviously, check the actual plate to be a little bit safer, because this could be 87 degrees, it could be 93 degrees, something along those lines. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come between my legs here real quick. I'm going to go ahead and dial in that 9 or 0 heading. Looks about right. Again, we're assuming here, we don't know exactly. Switch mode over to TACAN. You can see we've already crossed it, so now we need to go ahead and start swinging. Now I'm just going to pop it right over to Blizz mode here. Blizz nav. There we go. Please nav. And now you notice we have this new line up here on our screen, which is indicating exactly where we need to go in order to actually land this aircraft. And pull the nose up just a tiny bit as we kind of correct ourselves. Let's take a look at it in this view so you can kind of see what's going on. And you can see how badly we've overshot it there. That's all right. Usually you do these things quite a bit earlier. Take advantage of a nice tight turn. Ah, that's so nice. We're going to go ahead and push the nose down. Again, in F-16, your controls are going to be extremely sensitive because of the way that they're designed. This aircraft is naturally unstable. Really, really cool. And we'll get ourselves about here. By the way, in order for the ILS to work properly, this is one of those tricky things everybody misses. You have to make sure that the ILS volume is turned on, otherwise it doesn't work. It's kind of weird. And you also have to make sure over on this side that your mids is turned on as well, otherwise that will also not work. So now if we take a look visually what's going on here, you can see we're kind of cruising. We're ultimately going to try to line up with this part. If I actually were to draw a line like this, you can see just kind of how off course I am, but those lines will be moving pretty soon as well. All right, let's go ahead and get this thing ready to land. Now, an F-16 is it's a bit of a handful in a landing. It's a very, very high-performance aircraft, and when you come down, you basically fly the plane onto the ground. It's not like one of the other aircraft where basically, you're just kind of sneaking down, and then you're going to gently pop it down. It's no. You almost treat it like it's an aircraft carrier plane. Put it down all the way. It's not like a Cessna where you can just kind of pull the throttle back and just sort of pop it down gently. It's not going to do that. It's going to hit the ground really, really hard. That being said, the landing speed on this thing is not something you have to calculate. It'll actually do all that stuff for you. So watch this. So what's going to happen is those two little lines that represent my little ILS there are going to start moving in just a moment. As a matter of fact, if I look between my leg, you can see the blue line starting to center itself. Again, the exact same technique. This way, you're going to see a line come, there it goes, starting to come towards the center. We're going to get our speed down to about 250 here, getting a little bit comfortable. And now we're just going to sort of gently fly this aircraft all the way down to the ground. Remember, our initial heading there was about 9 or 0 degrees. Just swing it this way a little bit. And we should be more or less lined up with the ground at this point. Bring that back to the center. We'll go ahead and pop over here so you can see exactly how I'm basically lined up with it. Slightly off course, but again, we can just come to the left just a little bit. Now looking at this line, if the line is to the right, it means I need to come to the right. If the line is to the left, it means I need to come to the left. The bottom line represents my glide slope. As you can see, that needle went flying downwards, which means so do we. So I'm going to go ahead and start making my way down carefully here, down between my legs. Got a 16 nautical mile, a 16.1 on the nav, but that's okay. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to select my next steer point, make my life a little bit simpler here. And now I can see that I need to come to my left a little bit, and I'm about 13.2 nautical miles from the ground. Now, the great thing about selecting the steer point that is the airport that you're landing on is you'll actually get that little diamond there to make your life a little bit simpler. All right, looks pretty good. Nice. Now we're just going to play the chase the ILS needles game here. Come down into the left a little bit. Needle line's starting to come up. This is when you wish your heads-up display was a little less cluttered. There we go. Let's keep coming to our left, but we can see we're just about perfect. There we go. Yeah, just about perfect. So now our altitude is set correctly. We're going to go ahead and bring down the landing gear. As soon as you bring down the landing gear in this aircraft, the controls are going to get very strange. Because in this aircraft, when you put the landing gear down, what you're actually going to be doing is commanding your fly-by-wire system to go ahead and slow everything down, which makes the landings much smoother. The other thing that's happened, too, is we have this brand new staple that's appeared on the screen. That's this guy here. This is basically going to say your acceptable angle of attack for landing. What we want to do is get our flight path, which is this guy, in the middle of this. And again, the trick to doing that is simply hold the nose up a little bit, fits with the throttle, and next thing you know, you're going to have it exactly where you want it. I'm swinging back this way just a little bit, make sure we're lined up. I'm going to pull the throttle back a little more. I'm just going to hold the nose up. You'll be amazed how far up you're going to have to hold the nose in this aircraft. Oh boy. There it goes. That is the most cluttered heads-up display ever. I cannot believe it. Alright, you can see that our angle of attack is right in the center. We've got ourselves one circle. And you probably noticed that I'm sitting here very precariously in this seat right now. Again, you don't have to fly with that angle of attack that high the whole landing, but it's just one of those kind of quirks of this particular aircraft you're going to have to get the hang of. Go ahead and add a little bit of thrust. Again, look from the side at how steep of an angle this aircraft is coming down. It's incredible. Alright, looks pretty good now. You can see my ILS is nice and centered. That's what that crosshair says. But you can see my angle of attack is still very high. Keep in mind, most ILSs are not lined up with the runway. One thing we can do, too, is we can sit up in our seats. And it makes it much, 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 much easier to see what you're doing here. Alright, bring my nose up a little bit. Got it pretty much perfect. We're going to move to the left just a little. One cool trick, too, is you can take that little flight path vector and center right on the end of the runway and just leave it there until you basically smack into the ground. So we've got this thing nice and balanced down. I can back the throttle just a tiny bit. Still a little high, but that's all right. At any time, of course, you can pop out your speed brakes and feather those just a little bit. Remember, once you get the high angle of attack on this aircraft, it's going to have a very, very strong tendency to lose energy fast. It's kind of a quirk of something this lightweight. Of course, with this wing shape as well. That doesn't help. Starting to get high. I'm just going to let that pull the throttle back a little bit. That'll get me coming down. And you can see everything's looking pretty smooth. Again, I don't know what my landing speed is right now. All I know is the fact that if I increase throttle a little bit, I'll be right back on the glide path here. Still coming in a little fast, but that's all right. Back to the throttle. Again, I barely even got the throttle forward. This is a very nice airplane. Let's go double check to make sure our gear's down. It is. Notice our flaps came down on their own. We didn't tell them to do that. They just decided. So now when you land this thing, basically what you're trying to do here is you're basically trying to fly it down onto the ground. We're not talking like F-14 bang, but we're definitely not talking Cessna, let's cut the throttle and just let it glide in. All right, we're just going to use that right at the touchdown point. There's the marker. Does not take much. And we are down. Speed brakes out. Easy on the front wheel. And we are on the ground. Success. Remember, your nose wheel steering on this thing will not work until you actually push the button for it. So I usually wait to get nice and slow. Then I tap the nose wheel steering button so we have control. All right. Hopefully this video is helpful as far as basic navigation techniques as well as how to put this thing on the ground. Next time, we're going to take a look at some of the air-to-air capabilities of it. Enjoy.